Chapter 3. The Message of the Sea Maidens. The sun woke up to a new day, and one by one its golden rays brought light to the sleepy coral reef. The seasters arose from their hollows to observe the familiar landscape that somehow looked different now. The king had stayed up all night and was standing at the edge of the reef. He spoke in a quiet voice and seemed to be deeply lost in his thoughts. Nobody dared to interrupt his thinking. There was some movement in the water. Flickering lights were approaching. From the distance, the sounds of song reached the seasters, who stopped in wonder. Amid the rays of light, sea maidens emerged. Their hair glistened with jewels and fluttered in the waves. The gentle-mannered and nearly transparent sea maidens greeted the king.
We heard the call of the king. How can we be of service?
The time has come to send a message to the Earthlings. Big changes are taking place in the sea, and it will inevitably affect their lives as well. What happens above the surface is a mere reflection of what takes place beneath it.
The sea maidens picked tiny bells from their hair and jingled them. Giant silver oarfish swam up from the depths to meet the maidens. Silver oarfish are extremely rare and tend to stay amongst their own. The oarfish measured several feet and appeared to be dancing as they swirled around the sea maidens.
The oarfish will bring the message. The Earthlings will understand what it means. Start your voyage, my friends. Swim to every continent. Swim also to the depths. Bring the message to the sorrow eater. Change is inescapable.
Why are they talking about a sorrow eater? Who is that?
Maub. The storylines of the Earthlings and Maub are bound to each other. Humans used to be very different in the old days. Through the years, they forgot who they really are. They accumulated all kinds of belongings because they thought it would bring them happiness. The number of belongings ballooned, and humans no longer knew what they would do, as most of the material things proved useless to them in the end. They became sad and started to discard their useless things in the sea. Little by little, the sea floor filled up with uselessness. The mass of black and spoiled matter gave birth to a creature who started to live off of people's sorrow. And so Maub was born, and they grew stronger as they wolfed down and gorged on all the sadness.
But how will humans understand the oarfish? How will the fish bring the message to them?
Through centuries, the oarfish have risen to the surface when changes in the sea have started to impact the Earthlings. This event is carried in the memory of people. Whenever the oarfish appear, the sea will rise to the land.
And people's toes get wet?
It's a much graver matter. They will need to seek refuge further inland as the water inundates their homes.
Can they then return to their homes?
With time, yes, but they will have to rebuild them.
What happens to the seasters if the sea begins to roar? Can our home fall apart too?
Yes, it can. That is why we must call for help. Together we can clean out the sea that is being darkened by Maub, but we need help.
And what if Maub is stronger than us? What happens to us then?
Our traditions also speak of a secret treasure that the sea must turn to in the midst of great distress. It has never before been needed, and nobody knows how to find it.
But where can we look for it?
We need to ask the oldest inhabitants of the sea. If anyone knows, it is they.
And who are the oldest ones?
The whales.
But they live in the deep waters, so far away.
Sometimes we need to head to deep waters to find what we are looking for.
I want to go look for the treasure. I'm not afraid of the deep water.
Well, then I'll go too. We can't let you go so far on your own. You'd surely get lost without me.
In light of the dreadful news of possibly running out of food, I must join you. This turtle will need to find a snack or two to eat. Yes.
In that case, we will escort you on the first leg of the trip. There is one more messenger waiting to head out.
The sea maiden motioned for them to come closer, and then gave her bell a tinkle. The last oarfish swam over to them, and they carefully took hold of its silver fins. The sea maiden turned towards the fish and sang to it with a soft voice. The oarfish dashed off with the seasters bouncing on its back. The trip was a speedy one as the fish swam along a strong sea current. When it finally stopped, the seasters released their hold. The oarfish turned around and continued its route deeper and deeper into the blue. Its tail glowed and flickered faintly in the dark until it finally disappeared completely out of sight.